Welcome to the No More Dead Friends podcast. I am your host, James Evans. We are not affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. If you are interested in meetings, please seek out a local 12-step meeting in your area. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction and think that you might need treatment, please call 858-790-1937 to see what treatment options are available to you in your area. If you are having a medical emergency, please dial 911. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Daily Dose. I am your host, James Evans, and with me today is my buddy Josh Harvey, and we're going to be doing an episode today on parenting and sobriety. What's going on, Josh?
Hey, James. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Thanks for coming on. This is you're somebody I had in mind for sure for one of these topics. I know I've heard you share before in meetings and stuff, and I know I see you and Owen at a lot of the meetings, and he's one of the little mascots of the program who's at meetings super frequently. He's getting raised in the rooms, which is really cool to see. And also with our history going back together, like as far as we have and stuff from before we got sober, just seeing you and your role in your kid's life it's super awesome to see. And I'm super, super proud of you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, we'll get straight into the topic, parenting and sobriety. The first question I got for you here is, what were the consequences that you were facing, prior to getting sober? What was your relationship with your child looking like? Were you looking at losing custody, or did you lose custody? What was that looking like, if you could paint a picture of what it was like before you got sober?
So, yeah, I was facing consequences, and, I did lose custody of my son. And that happened about the time he was 6 months old. And, it was a direct result of my drinking and drug use. It was a long night. His mom and I had kind of been arguing. So, I went out and had a couple drinks. And it was one of those situations where we were in an argument. Things were kind of energetically charged prior to my drinking. And it didn't take much for me to get really drunk. There's been times where I drank a couple beers and got really drunk. And there's been other times where I could drink all night and not really have any issues. But that night in particular was one of the issue nights. And it led to, us having a almost physical altercation where like we were passing each other in the hallway and kind of like pushed each other out of the way. And, consequently the cops got called, and I ended up in jail for the night on like a domestic violence type of case. And, I got out of jail the next day, and I had to go and basically have a police escort with me to get my things out of the house where we had been living together and raising, my son Owen. And it was quite the experience, to go through that.
Well, yeah, and that's pretty much that end of the road that we all get to. I mean, we all get to the end of the road in our own way, but it doesn't take much more than a situation like that to really have the light shining on yourself. And as long as you have the ability to look inward and do some inventory real quick, that like I got to do something about my situation if this is where we're at.
Yeah, knowing that there was a way out, and I had seen people like you make that change and see success from it, that gave me a glimmer of hope that like there may be a different way to do this thing and live this life, and more importantly, raise this child. And I just gravitated right to the rooms where I needed to be. And you know how the story goes. I walked in my first A meeting and I saw you sitting there, and I'm like, there's no way. Like,
I know, and I still remember it too, right? Because I was the speaker, and I saw you walk in, but I didn't notice it was you. I just saw the Coheed and Cambria jacket, and I was like, oh hell yeah, Coheed fan, And then you walked in the room, and I was like, no way, he's back, baby, let's go. So was that like right around the time when that all happened? Like, Like, was that same week, same couple weeks, same month, or?
Yeah, same. It was the same time period. I think it was probably roughly about a month later, maybe a
Okay.
month and a half later. After I moved out, got my own place, things got worse.
Yeah.
Things got worse.
For sure. And obviously or maybe not obvious to the to people listening, but obvious to me because I was there for it. But I know that you've been sober since that meeting. So since getting sober, since that meeting, since that day, you came in, you started doing the deal. How has things changed in your life as your relationship with your kid? Like, what does it look like today? I know you have Owen on certain days. I know the days you bring him to meetings. So obviously today, you've remedied that situation. What does like your schedule look like? What's your relationship with your kid, and how does that all look like for you today?
Yeah, so man, things have changed so much. I'm so grateful. My relationship with him is full. That's one way that I could describe it. We have a very busy schedule. A few months ago, probably about 7 months ago at this time, Owen got a diagnosis of autism. And this was during my sobriety,
Yeah.
so that was pretty heavy. Thankfully, I was sober, and his mom and I were on good terms and still are on good terms. It really gave my relationship with him a different dynamic. But even to leading up to that diagnosis, things were just so different in sobriety versus being high or drunk with him. My patience is just on a different level. The way that I can love him and just be affectionate and care for him and try to teach him is just on a different level. And I think the most important thing that I've noticed was that my patience is there. Like, I don't get upset. I don't raise my voice. I don't ever strike him or like punish him in public. Like, I just try to like take him aside and have like a little one-on-one talk with him. And, when I was drinking and drugging, I was likely to yell at him for wanting a bottle or something.
Yeah.
And like, he doesn't know how to talk, he's nonverbal, and here's your drunk dad, he's going to yell at you, and you're just hungry, you wanted a bottle.
Yeah, yeah, and I see how you are today with him. I mean, you definitely have a lot of patience with him. He's definitely super happy to be around you, and it's definitely a beautiful thing to see for sure. Really quick, and I know you had mentioned that in that response there, you had mentioned that your relationship with his mother has been mended. So what does your guys' relationship look like today?
Man, today we are like a picture perfect co-parenting relationship. We split him 50-50 down the middle, and the schedule, thankfully I had a little bit of guidance when requesting the schedule that I have, because a lot of dads don't have the guidance, or the humility to ask another man who's been through this process, what do I do? I need to get my son more, and I work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. How is this possible for a single dad to get his son more than a Saturday and a Sunday? And thankfully I was able to lean into my stepdad, who's gone through this with my own mother and my brothers and sisters and stuff. And he kind of coached me through getting a schedule that would work for me and also give me more time with him that I was craving. So currently I have him Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I pick him up Thursday at 7. I have him Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and then all day Sunday, and he goes back home Sunday night at 7. So it's really a sweet deal. But I think, as far as the relationship with his mom and I goes, she's complimented and commented quite a few times about the changes that she's seen in me as a direct result from me being sober. And just things that she would never say, like, you're a great dad, and Owen loves you so much, and just like kind of just these validations that I never asked for, never thought I would get. And they've just kind of came and trickled in along the way. We have a clear line of communication. We both know that we're great parents for Owen, and we both know that we're great friends, and we have been for many, many years. We're just not so compatible when it comes to being romantic together.
Yeah, for sure.
I think processing all that stuff and getting onto this playing field that we're on now has just been game changing.
For sure. I mean, it's definitely the promises are definitely coming true for you. You know, it's the beauty of the program and getting sober and doing the deal and jumping in the middle like you have, you know, and I see too, right? Like I see the way you show up and you carry the responsibilities and you do all the things you need to do, right? Instead of, you know, I could imagine, you know, someone who's sharing custody like this, who might still be drinking and using, right? Like I know you had mentioned with his diagnosis, you know, I'm sure there's appointments you got to take him to, you know, and so for somebody who doesn't know how to show up in their day-to-day life, or you know, who doesn't have the ability to put their child in front of them for as far as their needs over their own, you know, it can be extremely difficult when you're still attached to the bottle or whatever substance you have. So what does like the routine look like for like appointments and stuff for him? Like what does that look like for you? Is there appointments you got to take care of, or is that
Yep.
mainly the his mother who takes him to appointments, or what does that look like?
So right now it's split. She does 2 appointments a week. I do 2 appointments a week. So I take off Fridays from work. So I pick him up Thursday night and then I take off Fridays completely. Fridays at 9 a.m. we have a speech appointment. So we go to a speech therapy place here in town, and you know, Owen and I get in there with the therapist and try to teach Owen how to talk and how to use his words. And you know, we're teaching him baby sign language and kind of just how to communicate for his needs or his wants in multiple ways, because he's nonverbal at the moment. So we're teaching him the sign language and, you know, how to cue us, whether it's taking me by the hand towards the front door if he wants to go play, or towards like the fridge or the cupboard if he's hungry. Just trying to get him to realize and to learn that there's ways to communicate what you want.
Yeah.
And that's Friday morning. And then Friday afternoon, we go to an OT therapist, which is his occupational therapist. And there we're mostly teaching him how to do social skills, like shared play, and just more of like the social side of things, like you know, eye contact, sharing toys. You know, it's all types of different things at that therapy. And another main focus in that therapy with the OT specialist is his eating, because he's such a picky eater. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the kid, if he had his way, he'll live off veggie straws and like Dorito chips.
Yes.
And like he took a page right out of dad's book, you know, like he's a
Yeah.
picky eater and I was too. So we're trying to get him to start eating, you know, his preferred foods, of course, but then introducing non-preferred foods, how to use like the utensils and stuff like that. And then he's on a waiting list to start up ABA therapy, which will be on Saturdays.
Okay.
And then his mom will have a day or two during the week for ABA. And that's more just like one-on-one playtime with the therapist. That's, again, trying to break him into those social cues, because he doesn't like to play with other people necessarily. He will, but he's not like snapped into that little kid playing with another kid mindset. He'll give
Yeah.
you a couple minutes and then he'll kind of float away and do his own thing. And yeah, we're just kind of going through the motions. And I've heard a lot of great things about going through this with the kids on the spectrum and seeing a lot of great results. And I know for sure that I've seen, just with his new OT therapist, we've been with her for about a month and a half, going on 2 months. I've seen so much progress, and it's really starting to give this little light at the end of the tunnel, you know, a little bit of depth, and it's starting to open up a little bit, like things are really going to be okay.
Well, as long as you continue to suit up and show up and do the next indicated step, it's how it's going to work out, you know. And it's super super amazing to see where you've came from all the way till today, and to be, you know, I mean, even us having this conversation, you look back 10 years ago, us talking in the Coachella parking lot, camping or wherever we were doing, whatever festival we were at, man, we would never think that these were the kind of conversations we'd be sitting down and having one day. So it's so amazing to see the growth there is fantastic. And what a blessing that you get to show up in your kid's life today and give him a better life, because if you were out of the picture and she was the one that was taking all these appointments and stuff like that, the burden on her would be a bunch. And, just that place of festering resentment that we all come from before we get here. It's remarkable when we could mend that and create like these dynamics, where we get to show up and do stuff that like we just never even thought we'd be able to handle. And then what advice would you have for any parents out there that are struggling with addiction, like whether they're somebody who's lost their kid in their situation, or if they're, if they're like married and they're struggling with alcohol or whatever, maybe they're dropping some of their responsibilities. What advice would you have for any parents out there?
I mean, shoot, I would like to preface it by saying, like, you don't have to lose your kids. You don't have to lose your wife. You don't have to lose your job. You don't have to lose your home, and you don't have to get a DUI, but it helps,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes that swift kick of motivation is enough for people to decide, hey, my kid deserves better, or my kid's worth fighting for, or I want to be part of my kid's life. So yeah, if I had any advice, it would be try to get in the rooms before the disaster strikes, because it will strike, and it's just a matter of time. It's something I've learned because I went through, anger management, and I went through outside help with therapists, and I started to pick up and learn about these different cycles that are in and a part of relationships. One of them being the abusive cycle. And it doesn't always mean physically, right? But there's this abusive cycle that surfaces in toxic relationships. And what that looks like basically is, a wheel spinning and everything's good. It starts out at the peak. You guys are in that honeymoon phase. Everything's just golden. And then the wheel starts to spin, and there's things that are starting to fester. There's resentments that are starting to get, put on the shelves and noted, but not talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And as the wheel starts to swing around, the resentment builds and the pressure builds, and then you have a big blow off, right? And then that wheel naturally keeps spinning around, and it gets to the top. So no work was done. The blow off happened. Everyone swept it under the rug, let a day, let a week go by, whatever that looks like. And then you're back in the honeymoon phase, and you start to go through the cycle again. Honeymoon phase lasts a couple of days, couple of weeks, everything's good and golden, and then the resentments start to creep back in. People are still irritated because none of the things that happened were discussed or processed or amended properly.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I did search in outside help as well, as far as therapy and anger management and co-parenting classes, because I learned a lot there too. And it's like, you hear that bag of tools that we have, it's full, and I have a lot of tools today, and they're very sharp, and I keep them sharp. So as far as like people that are struggling with just the thought or the idea, take a step back and look at it. Try to look at it from a different perspective. What does it look like, looking into your relationship? If you were an outsider looking in, or a bystander looking in, would you be saying, hey, that's a great family, that's a great relationship, or would you start to see through the cracks and start to wonder, like, what's wrong with dad? Why is he leaving the house every time there's an argument and coming back drunk? And then why does everything seem okay for a couple of weeks, and then we hear the door slam again and the car pulls off again? And it, for me, came down to just being humbled, and I was very humbled very quickly, and it wasn't something that I could say that I could take responsibility as far as doing it for myself. It was done to me based on situations that I caused. But I wasn't smart enough to say, hey, things are getting kind of rocky. I better try something different or something new. I had to fall flat on my face, and I had to find that pain that I was looking for, and when I found that pain, I knew where to go,
For sure.
and for that, I'm very grateful for this program and these principles.
For sure. Yeah. I know the seed was planted a while back, because I I remember previously, I think I had seen you with like 6 months or 9 months or something at one point. I feel like I remember you posting a purple
Yep.
chip.
Yep.
So somewhere around there, and I believe I was like either living in Colorado at the time or I had just moved back. And I've seen so many times, some of the homies, some of the people that we go way back with and stuff, and like, see them try it for a little bit and they hold their breath for a bit and then they go back out, or, somehow they manage to hold their breath and stay sober without really doing, going full in and jumping into the meetings and service work and the steps and all that stuff. So I just kind of like didn't really know where you were at with it. And then I had seen where you ended up again because of like Instagram stories and stuff like that, So you're definitely somebody who was on my mind for a while, and to see you come back and this all transpire has been awesome. So we're running pretty close on time here, so I'm going to jump into kind of the last question here. Kind of piggybacking a little bit off the last one. But what are you like? What are your thoughts on people who kind of don't understand addiction, who may say things like, why can't this person get sober for their kids? Or, this guy has such a great child, like, why can't he put his child ahead of him? Would you agree that you had to get sober for yourself?
For sure. And yeah, I hear that. I hear that comment and those types of things quite often. If I only had my family, I could get sober. If I only had my girlfriend back, I could get sober. And those types of things. And in my experience, what that looked like and what that felt like was just bone chilling pain. I would have my son for the couple of days that I was allotted to have him, and I wasn't sober, and everything was fine, and it didn't hit me until he was gone, and I
Yeah.
was all by myself, and the house gets quiet and it gets big when you're alone, and the thoughts and the pain really start creeping back in, and it in the beginning it was motivated by knowing that I needed to get my son back, like that helped me, but when push came to shove and I had my son back, I wasn't getting sober. I wasn't staying sober. And it started to hit me the hardest when I was alone, sitting by myself, just processing thoughts, running back the weekend or the day or the night of, Owen being with me, running across the living room, and I'm sitting there in the kitchen, not sober and indulging, and one day I had a friend over, and Owen was with me, and naturally I was in the kitchen and I was you know relaxing, letting loose, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but my buddy looked at me, square in the face, and he said, "What are you doing? Like, Owen's right there."
Yeah.
And I was like, he's a kid. He's not going to remember this stuff, like, it's no big deal. And, the day ended, and Owen went home with his mom. And that thought was just replaying in my head of like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? This is you, and you are doing this, and you're not getting anything out of it. And what you're feeling now is hurting you. So, there's this situation that happened one day, and I don't want to go too long into the time, but I was at a restaurant by myself with Owen prior to getting sober. Owen had fallen asleep on the way there, and I was having a couple drinks, and I was having a couple Bloody Marys. It was about 11:30, 12 o'clock at noon.
Hmm.
And Owen was laying across the booth, across from me, and I saw this guy come in with his daughter, and his daughter was walking side by side, and she was looking up at him, and she was just really happy. And I saw the dad; he was just glowing, and he had this spark. And I overheard the daughter say, "Happy birthday, Dad! I'm so proud of you." And I had a couple drinks in me, and I was a little talkative, and I kind of poked out at the guy when he was walking by my booth, and I said, "Hey man, it's your birthday," and he said, "Oh yeah, it's my birthday, and we're here to celebrate." And I said, "Oh, that's awesome, happy birthday." And he said, "Well, it's not my actual birthday." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "It's my AA birthday." And that hit me like a ton of bricks, dude.
Sitting there with the
Seeing
Bloody
that,
Mary.
sitting there with the Bloody Mary and my son sprawled out, passed out in the booth. And I'm just trying to get drunk enough to go home. And then here's this guy just with his daughter and himself, and they're just feeling good. And his daughter's super proud of him, and it kind of clicked with me at that moment that, like, I want to have that with Owen. I want Owen to be walking hand in hand with me, looking up at me, saying, Dad, you're the best dad ever. I'm so proud of you. It's your birthday, and it's not your actual birthday, it's your AA birthday. And someday he'll be old enough I can have a story, and I can tell him what that looked like and how much pain I had to go through in order to get sober. But, I wouldn't change it for the world. And it took a lot, but I had to dig deep within myself. I couldn't get it for Owen, even when I wanted it for Owen. I couldn't get it for his mom. I couldn't get it for the job or for the money. I had to get it for myself because I wanted to experience the peace and the happiness that I saw that man that day and what he had.
Beautiful. I mean, they say sometimes you might be the only big book somebody ever hears or reads. And so that's awesome that somebody can open that door for you and give you a chance to just see what we want of that life, and then here we are, a year and a half, probably somewhere around a year and a half later. And here you sit. So I know I've said it a few times already, but, once again, I'm super, super proud of you. Thank you so much for coming on here and doing this with me. I love getting some of the people we know in here to do this. So thank you so much, Josh.
I appreciate you, James. Thanks, man. And, I'm just following in your footsteps, and you've been a major part of my sobriety. And I can't thank you enough for just the opportunity to get with you and share a little bit about my story. And we'll keep it moving, dude. Thank you.
For sure. Right on, brother. All right. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening to the No More Dead Friends podcast. I'm your host, James Evans. We are not affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. If you are interested in meetings, please seek out a local 12-step meeting in your area. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction and think that you might need treatment, please call 858-790-1937 to see what treatment options are available to you in your area. If you are having a medical emergency, please dial 911. For information about our clothing line, please go to nomoredeadfriends.etsy.com. The No More Dead Friends podcast is made for educational, promotional, and entertainment purposes. It is essential to understand that the topics discussed in this podcast are based on general knowledge and are not to be considered as professional treatment advice. Please consult with qualified medical professionals before making any decisions or taking any actions based on the information in this podcast.